really like about the Mighty Mini, it's like a mad buffet. We have everything. So we've had the leader of Sinn Féin, we've had the King of Kerry, and I suppose today we have a Dacia warrior. We have a man all the way from Waterford who, to be fair to him, his adventures and his endurance CV makes me sound like a small, very, very small Boy Scout. So many people following the podcast would be aware that I did 9 marathons in 8 days and also attempted to climb Kilimanjaro with a washing machine. But to be honest, compared to my guest today, Alan Corcoran, compared to his CV, like I say, it's absolutely nothing. Alan, you're so welcome. It's fantastic to have you on the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much. Good seeing you, sir.
Good to see you too. Yeah, Alan and myself go back. When he says sir, it should be spelled S-U-R. That's the way it's pronounced in Waterford. Sir, boy, because about 5 million years ago when I had lovely black hair, Alan was in the school that I was teaching. It's funny the way our paths crossed, Alan. I suppose, central to all this conversation is your dad, Milo. Milo, about 500 million years ago, managed to get me a ticket to see Brazil play Ireland. And I think there was a young fella up front from Tala playing for the first time or second time for Ireland. That's how long ago it is at this stage. Tell me about your dad, Alan. Is he forever a part of you? Does he come out? Do you hear his voice coming out of your voice?
Yeah, 100%. I suppose people might know my dad, Milo, from the Football Association of Ireland. He worked very hard to move up the ranks as becoming the president. After a long stint of working through Waterford United Football Club and then getting up to being the vice president for a while. But yeah, 100%. He got me into sports and into playing football from the age of 6 out with Tramore AFC. And that was a huge part of my life, playing there for 10 years. So certainly a huge influencing factor in my life, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny the way... when I was a teenager, my mum and dad would annoy me saying things, and then all of a sudden one day I find myself saying something to my kids. I find myself saying the exact same thing in the exact same tone of voice. I think despite of ourselves, we do morph into them a little bit. I suppose the last 2 years, anyone following this will have heard me say it lots of times, but I lost my mum to breast cancer. And I suppose, to be honest, Alan, I've probably been to 5,000 funerals, between pupils and past pupils and friends and relations. And you go in, you shake someone's hand, you say, I'm sorry for your troubles. The truth is, I'm usually trying to get in and out as quickly as possible and get home for the roast beef and watch the Sunday game. And I suppose the pain and the sadness, it doesn't really register with you until you lose someone you really love. Can you tell us a little bit about your dad's illness and, what that time was like for you guys as a family?
Yeah, obviously a horrendous time. We were over in France for the Euros 2016. And yeah, all was fine. I suppose we're having a great family time, great occasion. My mum was there, my brother was there. You would have thought Evan as well, my brother. And then maybe around a month after that, then I got a call to say, Dad's not feeling well. It's not looking great. Can you get home? So I was working over in the UK at the time. And then from there, we went into the hospital. He got the diagnosis of bowel cancer, and within 3 weeks he was dead. So it was very, very, very quick. Took us by surprise. Obviously, something like that, even if you hear a diagnosis like that, you think, right, we're in this for a long haul, and that's sort of where the mentality was at. You need to have a bit of hope and a bit of fight, and he did. So we weren't expecting things to take a turn within 3 weeks. He was up in Welsh Park cheering on the Waterford hurlers, and he was down in Cork, and that week before he getting diagnosed, and then just all of a sudden there was this. It took us by surprise, obviously.
Yeah, it's mad. And it's, I found I was very familiar with the ritual of death, like going to removals. I thought I was, but like I say, when it's someone that you really care about, there's a lovely friend of mine, Olive, and I hope she hears this, but Olive turned up in my parents' house at the wake, but she had been to a concert the night before. She was a little bit, she would say rough for wear, but she had her concert t-shirt and her leather jacket on, but I can still remember the hug she gave me and the jokes we shared in the house. And that process of, losing someone was tough, but it was definitely made a lot easier by family and friends. Is there anyone in Waterford that your dad didn't know?
Probably not, because he spent most of his time working with Heineken. So he was a pub rep going around. So he would have met loads of people through that. And then obviously every Waterford United match he could get to, he was there. And so, yeah, he was well known and well respected, I suppose. It was great for me seeing that growing up. Everyone always come over and have a smile and shake his hand and be introducing him to someone. So
Yeah.
sort of a good role model there that I hope it rubbed off a little bit on me.
Did you ever notice on Facebook, Alan, when it's giving you suggestions, and there's someone on Facebook that you don't know, but 50 people they know, and then it transpires they have things in common. I think I was in the middle of training for Belfast to Waterford, and I met you in the great Conor McDonald's gym one evening, and I don't know if I ever said this to you, but I just felt, I felt like I had met a long lost brother, because in the middle of the madness, sometimes when you're setting out to do mad adventures and everyone in the world thinks you're completely mad. Someone said to me, I remember during my training once, someone said, "Are you trying to kill yourself? Are you afraid you're going to die?" And I said to them, "I'm really more afraid I won't live. I'm really afraid that I won't pack something in." And they didn't get it. But I remember that night distinctly talking to you in the gym and thinking, this fella's as mad as me,
Mad as a bag of spiders.
Yeah. So come here, let's dive into that bag of spiders. For people who don't know, your warm up, your first event.
Introduction,
I can. Do you know what? It's all coming back. I'm having flashbacks. I remember seeing you coming into the RSC. Am I right in saying that, on your final marathon?
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest, Alan, I was bitterly disappointed because you looked really fresh. I was expecting this fella who had done
crawling in
35 marathons. I was expecting drama, blood and guts, and here you were smiling, surrounded by loads of family and friends. Tell us how bad is 35 marathons?
35 marathons in 35 days. Yeah, it had a few rough spots, but had a load of great moments in it as well. So I sort of say it in the book there behind me. You can see it, that it was sort of life condensed into, I'm sure you'd probably relate to it, into sort of a short, compact period. That your highs were quite euphoric, and then the lows of the pain were just so intense as well. And what was mad, I suppose, about the challenges that we did is you're fighting this mad battle as you're going, and then you just sort of step off the side of the road and you're into a hotel and everything is just so normal. It's not as if you're in the middle of the Atlantic or like you up Kilimanjaro. There's no escape. There was just this stark contrast between you're battling through your marathon and then, just with the lads now having a pint up in Belfast or something like that.
Yeah. How quickly did the pain come, Alan? Like, I mean, I'm sure people listening to this might be planning to do a marathon, or if anyone has run 44K or 26 miles, it's a real challenge. But at what point did you start to realize this is a different league? This is something, I'm in a bad place here. This is tough.
Well, I threw myself in the deep end. I signed up to the Dublin Marathon. I signed up to run a lap of Ireland for charity without ever running a marathon or without ever running a half marathon. So my first step after committing myself was to say, sure, let's see what all this crack is about and find out where my baseline of fitness is. So I saw the Dublin Marathon was on. It's like, right, that's 4 weeks away. I will give it a go. So I had a 4-week crash course, which was a self.
Alan, what for people listening to this, what age were you at this stage?
I was 20, so naive and happy to give it a lash.
Yeah, so you felt it was important to give a solid 4 weeks before you attempted the marathon.
Solid, sensible 4 weeks. I would not recommend it to anybody.
Yeah.
So I had to make up my own little crash course, because obviously there's no such thing as a 4-week marathon plan for good reason. And yeah, I spent around 3 days in bed. I describe it as being dump tackled by Paul O'Connell in the book. Couldn't move. You might know Simon Cody. You do know him. He lives next door to you, of course.
He does, yeah.
I was living with him up in Dublin, so he used to deliver food to me door for the 2 days that I was crippled, just in a ball, going, "Oh God, what have I signed up to?" So that was a stark introduction into what the world of marathon running was about.
Yeah.
And that sort of put the fear into me then to try build a sensible base. So after that point of crippling myself running the Dublin Marathon, then it just went back to the drawing board, and then it was just yourself consistency over time.
And how much prep time did you give yourself for 35 marathons? Like, is there ever is there ever a right time?
No, I think you're rarely going to be ready for most things you do. Even if you think about applying for a job interview or jumping into a marathon, you'll always feel, I should have done more, or I could be better prepared. Even just before the marathon started, I was injured, and you're going, geez, this isn't great preparation. I'm 2 weeks out now, and I've got so much things to organise. This is going to fall apart. Should I defer it? But sort of got through these things by just being stubborn and going with the flow, rolling with the punches. So this is the date I'm starting, so ready or not, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think sometimes you just have to jump in. I often tell people, I remember at the start of Ironman UK, it was a surreal experience. I was in a collapsed coal mine outside Bolton at 4 a.m, singing God Save the Queen, and the sun was coming up. And I remember this guy pushed me, and I sort of leaned back and he pushed. And I was about to turn around and say, listen, I grew up in Wicklow, don't push me. I'm already tense enough as this is. And I turned around and there was a guy behind me walking down to the water, but he was carrying his friend, and his friend had no legs, and he had lost both legs in an explosion in Afghanistan. And you're so right, because I literally remember 10 minutes before going, God, my calves are very tight. You know, this guy didn't even have legs from the
What
knees
have I
down.
got to complain about?
Yeah. And I think too, there's I think for me, when I work with companies or business and people, and we're talking about mindset, the number one thing I think that a lot of people miss in their life is action. Like you took an action. You got up and you said, right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to raise funds for charities because of my dad's illness. But it's the action. You got off the couch. Now, I will tell you, the action is mad. Like doing 4 weeks to a marathon is crazy. And even crazier, 35 of them in a row is not the full. Did you ever experience, Alan? I've been very lucky talking to different sports people. I have some brilliant, have some cage fighters and boxers coming up, and a lot of them have mentioned to me this idea of flow, that you zone out so completely, or things are going so well that it's almost an out of body experience. Did you experience that on the 35 marathons?
Yeah, I find that through sports all growing up. I suppose when this lockdown kicked off back in, was it 2 years ago now, I tried out the old meditation and stuff like that, because you can't bloody go anywhere, do much things.
Yeah.
And it was all about being present in the moment and not thinking about this or not thinking about that. And then if your thoughts stray, they tell you to bring it back to the breath, and you're here. So I sort of felt it was quite like playing football, soccer matches, or even running or swimming. You're in the moment, just focusing on your technique or where you are, you're taking it in. And then you might think about what I'm having for dinner, and you come back to, all right, I'm running, how can I run more efficiently? How can I run more smoothly, or swim better? So yeah, I find that just an escape, really, that you're out and about.
It's interesting. Yeah, the escape. I think the people who trained for Kilimanjaro and traveled to Kilimanjaro with me would all say the same. What they missed most, and then they bring it up constantly, is the simple days we had when we were training. So we'd meet up on a Sunday morning. We'd have as much food on us as we could carry. We'd leave.
The phone is away, yeah, and just
phones were away, yeah. And we left the cameras maybe 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and we were still there till 6 or 7 in the evening. And they all described that childhood sleep that night. You get into bed and it's the deepest, most satisfying sleep ever, and they reminisce about those days. And Irish people love gore. They love, we had the anniversary recently of the chap who slipped on the ice in Dublin, hit his head, and it's on every year, it gets replayed. Tell us about this. I'm sure that people listen to this specific for the gore. How bad was the bad on the marathon? Can you share some of the bad with us?
I think I had every injury there was, from Achilles tendonitis and calf strains and quad strains, blisters, lost a toenail, black and blue. Swollen feet as well was one that I had by the time I got to Dublin. So Dublin was Marathon 5. And just the sweet relief of taking your runners off at the end of it. I was walking up O'Connell Street barefoot. You had to go in and get a charger for the laptop in the car. And the two lads in the support crew were like, oh, for fuck's sake, I don't want to be seen with this fella. What's he doing? And I said, lads, I can't put my feet into those runners. Like, this just feels so good to be barefoot and just not to be wedged in, because the swelling, I hadn't anticipated that or experienced it in training. Like in training, I was up to, I think, 116 miles. Yeah. But by the time I was running the marathons, you're doing your 26.2 miles every day for 7 days. So it's another step up again. You're doing around 190 miles in a week.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of miles.
Yeah. And the concrete, yeah.
What about food, Alan? Did you find, like, I experienced something horrendous called leaky gut? So when I was carrying the washing machine, I was literally, like, as hard as I could put calories in, I was putting them in. But then some of them started to come out of my intestine, stomach into the bloodstream, and I wouldn't recommend it. Oh, it's rough. It's rough. What sort of food were you eating, and how much calories do you need to consume to do 35 marathons?
I was horsing everything into me. So I used to get up and have 2 bowls, 2 bowls of plain porridge. He used to get funny looks off the hotel reception. 2 bowls of porridge, and then the lads, of course, and in the support crew would be just like full Irish breakfast or pancakes and all this sort of stuff. Just 2 plain bowls of porridge, and then eating on the trot. Anything from Jaffa cakes and jelly babies and bananas, gels, whatever you felt like. But there wasn't enough food to satisfy me, because we were lucky enough. We were into a new town every day. Hassling the people there for any sponsorship, so you could get anything from soup and a sandwich to the full 3 courses. So I said I never ate so many desserts in my life. Just I think on average, I say an adult would consume 2,000 to 3,000 calories, and if you're putting the marathon on top of that, it's probably you're doubling it by another 3,000 calories. On average. But I wasn't calorie counting by any means. I was just
get it in,
graze and shoveling. You could have your 2-3 courses a day plus.
And we better give them a shout out, because I'm sure they'll be listening to this podcast. Tell us about your support crew. Who were they, and literally did they support you? They did. Mostly it was just my friends and family. So a rare few of them would have had any experience in running, so they'd have no idea what the feck this fella's up to. Which was nice, because once you finished, then there was no talk of running. You were just totally switched off, and it was just hanging out with your friends, which sort of worked out really well when I was writing the story, because then it gives a relief. It's not just constantly I ran here, I ran there. There's all these funny stories with the lads trying out running for the first time. So I had Tom Davies, who was my neighbour, who you might know from De La Salle as well. No, I don't know Tom.
He took 3 weeks off. He was an accountant for PwC.
Right.
So he was the main anchor in the support, but he'd never ran really at all. But he came out one of the days, and he left after a mile or two saying, "Not for me, my feet are in bits." So he had a bit of a more of appreciation then for what I was playing at.
I know. We had a joke on our events. They used to call it tune into Radio Enda. So you'd be no phone. Someone walked beside me. We talked for a few minutes, and then when they got fed up listening to me, as people often do,
somebody else hopped in.
Well, the trick was, I noticed everyone had a very loose shoelaces, because they'd bend down to tie their shoelaces. Of course, I couldn't stop at the washing machine, and by the time they stood up, there was someone else in place, so they flicked the station. But there were happy times. I think for me too, I didn't realize, like, getting into this, and I'd love to talk about Unsinkable and your boat swimming, your adventure there. But I think a lot of the things I did or attempted to do or succeeded at were only because I had amazing friends and family and people around me. Like, a really horrible journalist asked me once, he said, "What was your greatest achievement?" And he was only digging for dirt. And the funny thing is, what came out, I said to him, was surrounding myself with great people. And the minute I said it, I went, "Oh, that's true." And it's good, because, on Belfast to Waterford, I hope he gets to hear this. Particularly, we had a fantastic Waterford man called Owen Keane with us. And Owen was sort of a cross between, if you can imagine, a sort of Bear Grylls on steroids. He's like the biggest, hairiest man, even hairier than you, Alan. For anyone not watching this on YouTube, he's sporting a proper beard as opposed to my mangy one. But like, Owen had experience in adventures, and like, I remember one day he was staring at my beard, and he said, he got on the radio up to the support crew, and the van pulled up, and suddenly I was handed 3 packets of crisps, and he said, "You're not to eat any of those, you'll be sick, just lick them and spit them out." Because he had seen salt crystals all the way across my beard, and I was starting to, but he spotted that in 2 seconds. Equally so, I can remember outside Carlo, he said to me, "Can I talk to you in private?" And I thought Owen was going to share this beautiful story about how he loved me. And he said, "You can't take any more painkillers today." He said, "You're talking rubbish." He said, "Either the pain stops you or the medication's going to stop you. You're right on the edge of your limit." And you need people like that, you need people like that to support you. Can I ask you, on in terms of the walk on, one of my favorite things was, like you say, in the evenings, the amount of people we meet, or the amount of stories. Can you share with us, was there any suitable story? I know there's all sorts in the books, but is there any suitable story, in case someone's listening to this podcast with their kids in the car, people you met or things that happened on the walk, on the run?
Well, I think a funny one at the very start, when we were leaving People's Park, I had a few lads that I would have done athletics with, the likes of Billy Ryan and Stephen Murphy, and there was Stephen Hall as well from Alfie Hale Sports was out. But there was a strange fella that I hadn't seen before. So around 50, 100 metres in, I was saying, "Oh, nice to meet you, what's your name?" And what's your story and that. So he introduced himself, but then he was like, I'm just here to check what pace you're doing. Yeah, that's all right. And he just veered off without saying anything else. I'm like, so he approved of the pace, I said to the lads, and we all just had a laugh and kept plodding on.
And did you see him again? No.
Didn't see him again, never, don't know who the guy was at all, yeah. So he just 100 metres said, that's good to know, all right.
Yeah, you know, we were somewhere outside, I think Carlo, on the way home, and one of the crew decided they wanted to give me a break, and so they handed me a sandwich and a bottle of Luke's in, and I can't remember who it was, but they popped the washing machine on their back and off they went. But they were off in the distance, and I remember I was feeling very sorry for myself, and I was eating my sandwich walking along, and this woman pulled in and she had some money, and she said, "Are you with the washing machine man?" And I paused. I didn't know what to say to her. I didn't say, "Yeah, didn't want to say it."
I am the washing machine man.
I am the washing machine man. And I said, "Yeah, yeah." And she looked at my friend down the road with the washing machine. She said, "He's a bit mad, isn't he?" And again, I didn't want to say to her, like, "Actually, I'm not." And then she said, "But you know, sometimes people need to do something. People need to make a statement. In my case, about suicide and mental health in Ireland, people need to do something." And like, do you remember the moment it came into your head that I'm going to go off and run 35 marathons? Like, was it a severe blow, or did you trip, or
a few points too many? No, the plan or the dream was to run a lap of Ireland. Figuring out that it was 35 marathons just came later. I suppose, yeah. So it was trying to run a lap of Ireland, and then I just said, well, maybe I'll do it as marathons, and I had the route, and I said, that's 1,500 kilometres. How many marathons is that? Just happened to be 35. So that has a ring to it.
Yeah.
let's go with that. Just pure naivety, and then it was deciding whether I should have days off or not. So that was a debate whether it should be consecutive marathons or having days off. And I remember chatting to Jerry Deegan, he ran I think a 2:18 marathon, so serious stuff.
Yeah.
And I knew him from Ferrybank Athletic Club, and he was saying, whatever about running 35 marathons, not having a day off, you're bonkers. You need a day off.
Yeah.
But I had to explain to him that this is not your definition of a marathon. Like, I'm not going to be going anywhere near 2 hours 18. Like, it's going to be, I was telling him, it's a very long recovery jog every day for 35 days.
Yeah.
But I suppose the concept around doing consecutively was trying to get that factor to try get strangers to donate to the Irish Heart Foundation, the National Rehabilitation Hospital, and the Football Village of Hope, which my dad was a charity my dad was involved in.
Right.
So I thought if I had days off, that it mightn't have the same impact. Also, as well, with the logistics, I suppose you know yourself, you bloody tear your hair out with different logistics problems, but having 7 days less of the challenge that you're not trying to find funding for and sponsors for, makes that side of things a bit easier as well.
Yeah, I'm pleasantly, like, I know most people's worst nightmare is to have to raise money for something, and like, I'm really always surprised at the goodwill and positivity of people. I hope he hears this too, but the wonderful Des O'Mara, physio from Waterford, like, Des managed to get a full physio team in place every night on our run. So we arrived into the hotel, and there was a physio, there was a rub down, but more than that, there was crack, and there was support and normality, you know, and it was really, really good. And I suppose I remember particularly on the first marathon, after I made a dog's dinner of my calories and my liquid, and I went into shock. And I think for the people in the room who hadn't seen someone go into shock before, I literally started bouncing on the physio table, shock from head to toe. And I also remember Des just put a blanket around me, and he got a couple of packets of sugar, and he folded them into my mouth, and he said, "You sit there now for a minute, you'll be grand." And he was so calm. He was so calm. Absolutely.
The sugar does it, doesn't it?
Yeah. But I tell you, it was the first and last time I took my eye off the prize in terms of nutrition and liquid and getting it right, you know.
I had that experience myself. I only hit the wall, well, once running and once swimming. Yeah. But in running, it was a training session that I described in the book as well, that it wasn't anywhere near one of my longest runs. I'd clocked up a few solo marathons in training on my own, and this one was maybe 19 kilometres versus the 42 kilometre marathon, and just found myself just veering and going, this isn't right, what's going on? So I just hadn't prepared, as you were saying there yourself, with food. I was a bit lax for the dinner before. I had a training session the evening before, didn't refuel properly, and then didn't have enough of a breakfast. I just sort of grabbed a banana and went. and then you're finding yourself going, what's going on? And I was in the contrast then. I was up in, it was Phoenix Park where I did a lot of my training up in Dublin. And you might know the court there, so they have all these professionals in their suits and their ties on, and I was there at the empty hydration pack and just veering and sweating and going, get me home here. Like, it's not a good place to be in. But then after that, just getting home, horsing the sugar into me, sitting in the shower. You were saying you had the blanket there. I just sat in the shower for 15 minutes at the warm water. And then after that, you're like, off to college now.
Yeah. And so Alan, what sort of times, like, so I'm sure people intrigued, like, I mean, what sort of times was I remember, a really good friend of mine, a fantastic guy, Jerry Duffy, did 32 marathons, a marathon each county in Ireland. And like, I was shocked when I looked at his times, because one, they were really good, but he got faster as he went on, which I couldn't get my head around at all. What sort of times were you doing, and how was your body reacting?
Well, Jerry Duffy was a huge part of this as well. I'd met up with him up in Mullingar to get the training plan. I'd only found out about him after I had signed myself up. I just started Googling to see if anybody had done it. And that's when I came across him. Him and Ken Whitelaw running the 32 marathons, 32 counties in 32 days.
Yeah.
So I knew the man with the plan, that I needed to get that training plan at work for him. And one of the wise things he said to me was, put your ego aside, focus on the goal. So the challenge is, you're running a lap of Ireland. It's a marathon a day for 35 days. You're not trying to run a 3-hour marathon at marathon 15, because I think he made that mistake. He said himself on one of the middle marathons, he said, I'm feeling good now, going to make a burst for this. I want to see if I can, I don't know, maybe run a 3.5-hour marathon. Yeah. And then he found himself reeling then for the next week nearly, and he was hobbling. So he said, don't do that, just get the distance done. So I think my fastest marathon was my last one, because you knew you only had to get to the pub that night. You didn't celebrate. You didn't have to be getting up the next day and the next day and the next day. Yeah. So that was 4.5 hours. But the average was 5.5 hours. So between 4.5 and 6.5. The longest was 6.5, and my knee was just shot. And I had to it was pissing rain up the north coast on the Giant's Causeway. Yeah. Just had to layer up and grimace and hobble, just sharp pains into the knee. Could not run after the half marathon point. Yeah. And just had to grit through it.
Do you know, I often, like, I love sharing my story with people. I love reading, like, I'm really looking forward to reading your book. And, but I say to people, like, not everyone needs to run mountains with washing machines, or not everyone needs to run the coast of Ireland. Like, for some people, running 5K, or losing a few kilos, or
100%
fighting the battle with the bookies, giving it up, or whether it's alcohol, like, everyone has their own battle. And like, I think I'm always prone to extremes anyway. Like, I laugh too much, I talk too much, I care too much, I shout too much, I eat too much, everything is too much. But I'm really keen for people. I'm glad that people enjoy the stories, but I really want people to think about that tonight, if you're listening to this, or today, that your individual battle, your individual challenge, it's, we all walk our own journey, and it's important that people keep that in mind. I would hate someone to say, God, I can never do 35 marathons, so I'm not even getting off the couch,
100%. I have that as well, as mentioned. I touched on that in the story, because I had, as I was saying with Tom, like, I was taking the piss saying that he'd ran 2 miles and hopped in, but I was saying, jokes aside, like, all credit to him for getting out and giving it a go. Yeah. And I had Sean Kinsella ended up doing 3 marathons. And somebody else ended up doing a half marathon with me. But like, everyone's got their own starting point. Everyone's got their own reason. So there's always going to be somebody that's going to do something way beyond what you can. But because somebody can run a marathon in 2 hours doesn't mean you shouldn't try to just complete one in any time, or at any scale. But you said, a couch to 5K. Yeah. It's just about getting out and moving and meeting people and doing something for your health, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, like, I sometimes, if people are talking about mental health, it tends to be very dark and serious. And, I said to someone the other day, I said, you want to know what antidepressants I'm on? And he said, tell me. And I said, obscene amounts of burpees and press-ups. And he was like, what? I said, yeah. I said, I exercise because it keeps me happy. Just before we did this podcast, I did a workout, and I was barely able to drive the car back from the gym. And I know when I get into bed, it'll be 3, 2, 1, lights out, no sleeping tablet, no brandy needed, because, I've pushed myself today. It's been, and if anyone's listened to this who's struggling, and I know people who have mental health issues, might have been drawn to the Mighty Mini podcast, but honest to God, exercise, it is that magic tablet, but it's something that I would urge to not to let get out of control, like Alan let. Alan, Tell us about all that keeps coming into my head is like, well, the swim, like to swim the length of Ireland. I'm actually debating in my head, is that madder than running 35 marathons? Swim the length of Ireland, and then as crazy as it can get in the middle of it, what keeps sticking to my head is like, why have a support boat called Unsinkable? Like, that's
Unsinkable too.
unsinkable and unsinkable too. Tell us a little bit about the swim. Tell us about how it came about.
So the run came off the back of my dad having a stroke. I suppose that was the kick up the arse. So I had the notion of doing it before that, but that was sort of the catalyst which made me commit to it. And then the main catalyst for the swim was my dad dying of cancer. I had actually picked up a book, so that's one of the main reasons why I wrote this. But the notion of swimming came in from a book by Sean Conway, who had swam the length of Britain. And even for the run, that came from Eddie Izzard having he did, I think, 43 marathons in 51 days.
Yeah.
So just people sharing their stories has that influencing factor. So that's something I wanted to try continue that sort of chain reaction with that. But going back to the swim, yeah, so I had the initial idea from Sean Conway swimming the length of Britain. And then after my dad died, then it was just, right, I need to do something here to get out of this rut, a positive focus, and create something positive out of all the shit show, really, and the nightmare that we found ourselves in. Met up with my friends in London for a few pints to see what I could do. And the initial
are these the same friends that were involved with the 35?
Yeah, they're all leading me astray. Yeah, but in fairness, now these guys tapered me back a bit. So my initial plan was to swim around the entire coast of Ireland.
Oh my God!
But we wanted something. Knowing myself from running the Lap of Ireland, a huge amount of the foundation or the money raised came after crossing the finish line. So by marathon 32 or 33, I only had maybe $7,000 raised. Once I finished and had that media show for the 2 weeks after, it doubled up to 15,000. So I knew I didn't want to bite off too much, that would be an inevitable failure. So I thought, what's harder than running a Lap of Ireland, but what's still somewhat achievable, that we can actually cross the finish line and raise the few bob. Ultimately didn't go to plan, and I did make a bit of a balls at the first attempt, but managed to go back and correct the mistakes then 2 years later.
Come here now, you're not glossing over it that quickly. Tell us when you say, so I mean, I had great respect for what you were doing, and obviously I think most people who knew you or anyone in Waterford were following it, and geez, it was like a bad film. It was getting worse day after day. Tell us some of the disasters without giving away all of the secrets of your new book, Marathon Man. Tell us some of the disasters on the first swim that went wrong.
Well, Marathon Man stops at the Lap of Ireland run, so that's sort of the focus on that. And we're working on the Unsinkable film, which is premiering this December.
Fantastic.
Local crew from Imagine, led by Peter Grogan.
Brilliant.
And we actually have a Waterford composer as well, who's doing the film score, Pierre O'Reilly. So yeah, really looking forward to that. What went wrong on it? Everything. We were saying Murphy's Law. I suppose it's the logistics side of things was the main issue on that. When you're doing a land-based thing like the run, it's fairly regimented. You're up at 7 a.m, you're on the road at 8, you're finished at lunch. You know exactly you're going from here, 42.2 kilometres. Whereas on the swim, you hadn't a clue what was going to be happening tomorrow. The tide is changing an hour every day, so you can't get into any routine. The weather, obviously, I think we lost around 4 days with just gale force winds on that second week. And you're going, just trying to be patient about the whole thing. That's all I just wanted to be. You're training to be swimming every day, and then you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs because it's not safe to go out onto the sea.
Yeah, it must have been a head wreck to like the days. And then I clearly remember too, when you had good weather or good days, your inclination was
the boat was fucked.
Yeah, and then what your other inclination was either you were sitting around going mad because you couldn't swim, and then when it was good, you seem to bury yourself by doing massive distances. Like if the tide was with you or the wind was with you, you seem to be really going after it, which then you pay the price the next day. And if anyone can find images of that on social media, or I hope people will support you and go to see the film. I'm looking forward to seeing it myself. But one of my memories of it was your eyes. Like the real distress and stress and tiredness in your face. And each day it was getting worse and worse. And, you know, some of the posts were getting, you could see the emotion in it, you know, even in the words, you knew this was important to you, but you were struggling, you know, you were really, really struggling. At what point did you feel enough's enough? We have to stop this.
I was taken out of my hands on the first swim because the boat sunk. I'd ran out of support crew. The boat had sunk in the harbour up in Newcastle after getting rescued by the RNLI the night before. So I got one more swim in with the local fisherman on his boat, Mary Lou. So shout out to Seamus McConkey for taking us out for one extra day. But after that, you're going, how many fishermen am I going to get along the coast? So I just made it shy of the border of Northern Ireland there. I was like, at that stage, I was doing it full time for a month. I swam 210 kilometres, but you were so far from home. It was just like, yeah, I have to call this a day. Yeah. Once I had no crew, I sort of felt I have the boat there, so I'm not going to give up just yet. I'm going to get volunteers to come in a day here, a day there. But once the boat was gone, you're like,
yeah.
That's that.
And what was the time schedule before you decided, right, I'm going to go back at this again? I'm not letting it go.
Yeah, it was actually triggered from an interview I did with WLR. I was very happy to well, not happy, I suppose is the wrong word, but I was content in putting it behind me. I felt I'd given it everything I had. Put a lot of money into it, the time into it, effort, all that, and it just didn't work out. So I just moved on, went back to work full time back in the UK. And then I did this interview with WLR, and she asked me what did I learn from it. And I had some stupid answer. I said, oh, the Irish Sea is cold or something. Because I hadn't put any thought into it. I hadn't had a coffee that morning either. But after the interview then, I actually sat down and considered, well, that's actually a good question. And it's stupid of me not to have sat down and broken down what I could have done better, or what I could have corrected on it. A week or two later then I was like, right, I think I had the answers. Mostly it's around organisation, the swim itself. I could do a bit more cold water work, but the physical act of swimming, I felt fine. Just mentally getting used to being in the sea and the cold water was one thing, but the boat and the support crew were the main two things. So it was just, if I can be more organised on that front, I think I can do it. So once I had that sort of figured out, got out the bank loan, bought a bigger boat, and we went back to the start line.
Yeah. And in terms of, you know, sometimes I think people who've run 2 or 3 miles, they feel pain and they stop, or you get a stitch and you stop. People often say to me, like, how the hell do you keep going? And I suppose for me personally, like, I think I was very conscious that so many people were watching this and it was raising money for a cause that was important to me. And that gave me massive motivation. I think also with the pain thing for me, I generally tend to pick a spot on the road. I can concentrate so deeply that I can remember, you know, you were talking about the dinner and the crack in the hotel at night. I remember we got to a couple of hotels and someone said, God, do you remember that car? Or did you see that house? Or did you see that woman? Or, geez, that fella was a bit weird. And like, I just used to smile and go along with it. But I saw nothing. I absolutely saw nothing because I could absolutely bury myself in concentration so deeply. Someone asked me one day, was I praying? Because to get the correct posture and weight, I put my hands like that, if you're watching on YouTube, and the harness for the washing machine would pin my shoulders, and I would literally stare at my thumbs or the pothole in front of me. Do you find, you were talking earlier about meditation, do you find you can really go into a deep focus, or how do you deal when the pain comes?
Well, with the swim, you have less stimulus, I suppose, that's what I love about doing trail running. You're out in nature and you're looking around. Could be wildlife running past, but when you're swimming, your head is down and then you see this, and then your head is down and you see this. And there's very, very little distraction there. It depends on how hard the day is, I suppose. There's some days where I was just, it was literally going right arm, left arm. It's like that sort of row. It had to be broken down. The challenge of running a lap of Ireland or swimming the length of Ireland is just too big a lot of times. So you have to just pull it right into what can I do in this moment to get closer to that goal. Yeah. I'm sure you probably found that yourself when you were going, that you need to, even with the run, for me it was, can I get to that tree over there? Okay, I'm at that tree. What about that signpost? On the hard days, on the good days, it was just smooth, having the crack, smiling. But you're not going to have smooth sailing on these kind of things. There's just too many variables in it, and it's such a demanding strain to put on your body on those hard days. So it's just pulling it within reach.
Yeah,
And
I think without being rude, I'm naturally drawn to mad fellas like you. And I met oh God, Eamon Keaveney. Eamon walked. He got into the Guinness Book of Records. He walked the full circumference of Ireland barefoot. He did what you did barefoot, but when he was near Waterford, so I couldn't help myself. I had to go. I had to go and spend a couple of days walking with Eamon. But I remember saying to him one day, like, I looked at his feet and I was disgusted because his feet were perfect. I was expecting blood and guts and, falling apart. Yeah. His feet were like a newborn baby. And I said, how the hell is this possible? Because at this stage he was halfway around Ireland walking barefoot. And he gave a brilliant metaphor for life. He said, when the road got spiky or when there was rough tarmac or pebbles, he said, you just slow down. You just drop the pace, he said, and place your feet carefully. And when the road is smooth, good tarmac or mossy or grass on the verge, he said, then you walk along. And he said, it's the exact same in life. When we're faced with tragedies or difficulties and you're squeezed, he said, just be kind to yourself, just slow down, but keep moving forward. And I thought it was brilliant, I thought it was really, really brilliant.
And I saw something recently where they said forward, not straight, which I thought was very good. So
that's lovely, yeah.
It doesn't have to,
forward, not straight.
Doesn't always, your trajectory, as long as the trajectory is broadly right, you're doing on the right path, aren't you?
And listen, I'm fascinated. Tell me, the process of writing a book, how did you find it? And
the writing I found was great crack. It was because a lot of it was done during lockdown. You weren't able to go anywhere, but for me, I was able to relive the whole adventure again.
Yeah.
I was surprised with how emotional it sort of was. I was still smiling at the funny times and getting frustrated at the difficulties again. And going, I can't believe that happened. And so it was a great escape when you were stuck in, at the time, a large part of it, I was in the UK in like this overpriced 1-bedroom flat in London. So it was a great escape. But I think it was one of the guys in the book centre said, writing a book is like a triathlon. So you write the book and he said, that's your swim done. But you still got the cycle in terms of all the production side and making it into an actual physical book that looks well and edited and all that.
Yeah.
But then you still have the swim or the run left, the final leg, which is the promoting and the marketing. So that's what I'm finding the hardest bit. I love the creative thing. It was a bit like doing the run around Ireland that I'd signed up for a running challenge because I loved running, and that was a great part. But then if you want to raise money, you need to be doing the talking and the selling and all that, which is another kettle of fish entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking over here at a couple of copies of my book sitting here beside me, and the minute it came through the letterbox, oh my God, it was like Christmas morning. I just a sense of joy. But 100 podcasts later and 25 interviews, geez, I was just and I was on loop because you're saying the same things over and over again. But you're right. I mean, it has to be done if the book is going to be sold. I think the way you've done things too with the book and the audio and the movie is very much. It very much replicates your attitude to life. Get up and do it and get moving. You've self-published. Am I right in saying that?
Self-published, yeah. So it's been a steep learning curve for your learning you have to hire editors and book designers and graphic designers and all that shebang, and then figuring out how to get it into the bookshop. So initially it was out on Amazon. Thankfully, it's getting great feedback so far. But then trying to get it onto the bookshelves, it's an uphill struggle when you're self-published because you don't have the might of Penguin or Gill or Hatchet and their marketing teams to be pushing it into those stores. But slowly picking up now. We have the book centre in Waterford and book centre Wexford, and a few of the Dublin stores, and some libraries are after stocking it as well, which is great. So slowly getting there, slowly but surely figuring it out and learning every day.
And have you seen it on a shelf and in a public place?
I'm next to your book in the book centre Waterford. So yeah, I'm in good company.
Yeah, they put all the lunatics together. I remember the first time I saw it in the shop window. I walked past, and I didn't want anyone to see me looking. And then I sort of did a bit of a small handbrake turn and walked back down again and saw it in the window. Yeah. And the excitement was magic. I think you're right. I think I learned an awful lot about myself. It was it was really I suppose it was therapy in loads of ways. It made me think and made me stop and made me get organized. The marketing and sales side of it was really, really tough. I suppose I've been lucky too in that I'm with Orphan Press, and you know, they had a fantastic team and gave me loads of advice. We had loads of arguments because I wanted to do things my way. Like they wanted me to go.
Yeah.
Well, they
That's
wanted
one
me
good
to go
thing about self-publishing. You have a bit more leniency on what.
Yeah, well,
it
they
is you're
wanted
going
me
to
to go
write
to
about in the
Dublin for a
field.
big, you know, fancy photographer and all the rest. And I said, no, I want to go with a local guy because I trust him and I know him, David Sullivan. And
Yeah.
the photograph of me screaming it was him, and he got that photo because he knew me, and he stayed at it till he got it, you know. And it's been a brilliant process. You know, anyone interviewing you is going to really enjoy this. They're all going to run out of time. It's the nice thing about a podcast. I'm not under the same pressure. I'm afraid to ask. I'm really afraid to ask. What's coming? What's down the line? There is a next.
I want to ask you if you've still got that washing machine. Is it going to come out again for something else? Have you got something planned?
Right. Truth is, I just can't bring myself to throwing it out. It's in my shed. It's got a blanket on it. I look at it regularly. It's like an old friend, and I can't get rid of it. But to be honest, I'm 53 this year, and like I've had shoulder surgery coming out of my adventures. I've had foot surgery. I've given myself arthritis in both feet. I'm
You'll have to get off the feet now and into the water, Andy. So that'll solve that.
The last thing my wife said to me coming in to record this podcast is she said, "Don't come out of there with any mad ideas," because she's sort of, if we're watching documentaries in our house, like she'll say, like 30 seconds in, she'll look at me and she'll say, no, not even before.
I get the same here, so you're not on your own.
So come here.
If you get a flotation device on this, then you'll be grand.
Well, at one point it did cross my mind to put it on a float and swim with it, and I would dearly love to do 100 miles on the Great Wall of China. That was a long-term dream I had but I think the bigger picture, I wanted to learn Mandarin, and I didn't want to go to the tourist parts. I wanted to go to parts of the Great Wall where they never meet a tourist, they never meet an Irish person, you know. Because I think, you know, like Lance Armstrong's book is titled, it's not about the bike, it's not about the washing machine or the events. It was the people, the adventures, who we met, what happened. That's where the magic is, and I didn't know that, you know. And I have a group of friends, you know, like, who did both adventures, and frequently I get a phone call or text and, geez, I'd love an old adventure. Any chance you'll do something?
What are you up to now?
Yeah. The bit that puts me off, honestly, is not the physical training. I'd love that. What puts me off is exactly what you've been talking about on the podcast here is, like for us, we had 130 people went to Tanzania, and the effort to organize 130 flights, medical crew, doctor.
It's hard enough trying to organize myself, but
it was
around that.
And then to raise a couple of 100,000, you know, and you're doing it. It's not a vanity project. You're doing it for an important charity, an important cause, and I felt huge responsibility to raise the money. So that would probably put me off. But Alan, have you something in mind? You must have.
Well, this summer I tried to be the first person to stand up paddleboard around Ireland, and I had spent a good 8 months and probably around 8 grand of my own savings trying to push it and plan for it. And then on day one, 7 hours in, 50 kilometres paddled, the skipper crashed us into a rock off Ardmore, and that was that. So I'm still reeling from that, still too soon. After putting so much effort and energy into it, I'm still heartbroken over that.
Did you learn anything from that, Alan? Did you learn anything from it?
Don't go near the rocks. That's a bit like.
And basing that on what you said, your WLR, what you said,
that's just going the same thing as well. Yeah,
when you go back,
the water was cold, but but I think for that one, it's going to be timing and financing the bloody thing, because I lost a heap on this one. So it's still rough. So I'm over in Canada at the moment, actually. So I'm in Canmore, which is just surrounded by mountains and lakes. So there's no sea to be training where I was in Tremor.
Yeah, I saw a photograph you posted. I don't know, was it yesterday or the day before on social media, and there was it looked like, to be honest, it looks like it's photoshopped. The mountains and the trees behind you are so blue and so green, and it looks amazing. Yeah. But what struck me most about the photograph was the happy head on you. But because you clearly had either just finished exercising and you were with a group of people, but like the absolute happiness that's in your face because you're obviously doing what's your passion, you know. What had you done yesterday? Was it small 70 or 80 miles, or was it?
Well, yeah, there's something in the water over here when you hear people saying, "Oh, I'm doing a marathon."
Yeah.
It's not just a marathon. It's like some 60K up 5 mountains and looping around again. They're a different breed over here. It's fantastic. Once I landed, I just had a quick look up running group, and there's a group called Canmore Trail Culture, and it's from sort of 25 up to 65, and there's all abilities. And I'm there struggling to keep up with 60-year-olds. I think, God, that's inspirational. Like, and they're just up bloody mountain goats. So I'm used to, yourself running around Waterford. There's not too many hills that you be going. Like, you're starting at sea level, whereas here the town is flat and it's on 1,300 meters, which is higher than Carrantoul.
Yeah.
And then you're looking around and you're surrounded by all these monster of mountains. So I'm sort of a beginner over here, trying to get used to the elevation and up and down, but really enjoying it. There's so many groups of all abilities and meeting loads of people through sports, which is one of the great things I found about sports, is that it's such a barrier. It breaks down barriers. Like I mentioned, my charity that my dad was involved in, the Football Village of Hope, which was between Israeli and Palestinian children, and just the joy that he had on his face describing that, where he'd go out to Israel and he said that they'd be making absolute mincemeat of each other on day one, but after a handful of games, they were all buddies and pals and beating the other side, and every sort of prejudice was just sort of gone out of it.
Yeah.
And they were just having fun, sports and moving.
Yeah, it's about move your body. Like I often say to particularly kids, say, if you want to do well in school, exercise. And they're like, what's that got to do? And I say, you'll sleep better, you'll concentrate, you'll be happier. And it doesn't matter what you do, just move your body, whether it's dancing or show jumping or hockey or camogie or hurling, it's just to move. And I think maybe I think there's a whole, I hope I'm wrong, but I think there's a whole bubble of young people who will have lost 2 years of their teenage years that they should have been running around and doing stuff, and they won't have experienced what you did in Tramore or what you did in Ferrybank Athletics, I'm if he's banned you from speaking about it, please don't. But I'm always intrigued about your friendship with Tommy Barr, that you have an Olympian and probably world famous athlete, and here he is trying to drag you around the country swimming. Tell us a little bit about the connect. How far back do you go, and does he ever try to talk you out of this?
I'd say we'd known each other since we were maybe around 10 in Ferrybank Athletic Club. I discussed that in the book, where he was sort of the high jumper and I would have been way ahead of him. He would have been a year or two below me, so he would have been trying to keep up. And then I came back one year, and the further into the repetitions we were going on our hill session, he was just pulling further and further away. And I thought, Jesus, I'm going backwards here. I'm treading water. What's going on? Yeah. Little did I know he'd be turning himself into this national record holder, and came fourth in the Olympics in Rio, and he got medal in the European. So he's just absolutely delighted, living through his successes. I feel so much just energy and excitement when I see him running on stage, and just feeling proud for him for what he's achieved. But in terms of what he helped big time on the first attempt at the swim. So going back to the great issues with logistics and all that, for the first challenge, I had a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C in terms of sponsors that were willing to give me a loan of their support boat. That no problem, yeah, great. So I just focused on the swimming side of things. The closer we got to the start date, then they all started changing their mind one by one. So I was 2 weeks out going, I'm after training for the year, I'm good to go. I had crew lined up for the first 2-3 weeks, but then I had no boat. So Tommy got in touch with me and said, I don't want to see you not starting after all you've gone through in the last year, between what happened with your dad and the effort that I can clearly see that you've been putting in. So we went boat shopping and bought the lastminute.com. We went 50-50 on this rib, but because we were up against it, we didn't have time to check it out as thoroughly as we wanted to or could have, if we had a bit more notice on it. But we were just rolling with the punches, making do with the hand we were given. And I owe him so much for getting me to the start line on that first attempt in 2017.
It's the maddest adventure. I'm really looking forward to reading the book, but I'm looking forward to seeing the movie and reading book 2 as well. It sounds like a fantastic movie. It really does, because I mean, to go from running up and down hills in Ferrybank or kicking a football to 35 marathons, failing swimming the length of Ireland, swimming in a second. Like it's just fantastic stuff. I think, I think in a dark world, and sometimes when people are lacking inspiration, we do need, you were very kind to mention, to the chap who had swam the length of Ireland, or swam the length of England, and
Sean Conway,
and that inspired
Eddie
you.
Eddie Izzard, and Terry Fox as well was another one. I suppose now that I'm being in Canada, I have to give him a shout out. He was one of the inspirations.
But I'm sure, Alan, that people will read Marathon Man, and I'm sure that they'll be greatly inspired. And I think better than inspired, I think they'll be entertained by the story as well. Alan, thank you so much for coming on the Mighty Mini podcast. But I don't want to finish without asking you this most important question. Where can people get Marathon Man?
It is available through my website, which is marathonman.co. So that's marathonman.co. Or they can just look it up on Amazon. It's also available on Audible. So I recorded that, an Audible with a Waterford accent. I don't think there's too many of those going around. And through your local bookshop. So it's in the book centre in Waterford, Wexford, or any bookshop in Ireland should be able to get it in for you if you want to support those guys.
Fantastic. Alan, thanks so much. It's great to see you. Keep smiling, keep exercising, and don't let anyone tell you that you're mad. If someone says you're trying to kill yourself, say exactly what I said. No, I'm trying to make sure I stay alive and as long as possible. Alan Corcoran, thank you so much for coming on.